Heroes of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 173 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 29 of A Storm of Swords, that's Arya 5.
Did you hear how I said, and I'm Mackelly? Did you see on the Discord server, I think it was Rob said that the way I said it in, I guess, this week's episode, the one that came out this week, I sound like Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. I did not.
Go on, give me a rendition.
And I'm Mackelly? I don't know.
Oh yeah, I can hear that little uptick at the end is a bit
Mackelly?
Ned Flanders. Yeah.
Well,
howdy doodly do, neighbor.
As always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, and hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, sir?
I am doing all right. I'm literally coming straight from watching the Pittsburgh Steelers' final game of the regular season. We had to beat our rivals, the Browns, and then we needed the Bills to beat New England, which they did handily, and then we needed the Jets to beat the Dolphins. And the Dolphins kicked a field goal with 18 seconds left to win by 3.
That's lot.
So.
You were kind of cool about this in our pre-roll chat, but that's cruel.
Yeah, that hurts. But like you said, mediocrity is less stressful. And this season we started 2-7 and then rallied to finish 9-8. So there was a lot of who really cares? And you're right.
The season is 17 games long now.
It is, yes, 17.
When did that happen?
2 years ago. I think last year was the first year. So
I didn't even know that.
But yeah, it is less stressful when you don't, when your heart and soul isn't tied into how some team that you have no control over fares. It is less stressful.
American football is a strange sport. I mean, all American sports are very strange. I mean, honestly, they are just strange. But one of the things that's kind of weird about it is the teams that get to the playoffs haven't played all the teams.
True.
So it's hard sometimes to gauge how good a team is because
Yes.
they play who they play.
Right.
And who they play may or may not be representative of the quality of the entire league.
Very true.
And so, but now you've even made it worse because you're going to have 9 home games and 8 road games, or vice versa.
Or the other way around, right.
So, home field advantage, which is significant. Is it significant in football?
Yeah, that's debatable. But this 17 games is just a step toward 18, which is where they want to go.
Of course, yes. I know how these things go. The World Cup is going to grow from 32 teams to 48 teams because why not spend 2 months wasting everybody's time with pointless soccer?
So I'm fine though. I'm doing all right. I mean, my phone is blowing up. I'm new to the iPhone thing. I think I've successfully muted it, but Ethan's been texting and calling, and I can't answer. And everyone's texting, and we're just dealing with the after effect of missing out on the playoffs by a Jets 50-yard or a Dolphins 50-yard field goal. But otherwise, I'm fine. How are you?
You do have to say that putting your future in the hands of the New York Jets is always a terrible idea.
Yes, it is. Couldn't have been any other team except it had to be the Jets.
I'm doing okay. Actually, I mentioned soccer. I don't know if you've heard the story that's going on in the US men's national team soccer, that the coach has admitted to assaulting his wife 31 years ago. Did
right.
you hear about this?
I've seen a headline about it.
Yeah, I haven't read much into it, but the basic story of this, I swear this story sums up soccer in the United States better than almost anything I've ever heard, is that he didn't give enough playing time to a kid in the US national team at the World Cup. And so that kid's parents, who are friends with the coach, threatened to announce to the world that he'd assaulted his wife, so he jumped ahead of them and admitted it.
Wow, I did not know these details. Wow.
And I can't believe how ridiculous that is. I mean, that is like so low rent 5th graders playing, soccer. The parents are angry that the coach didn't give their kid enough playing time, so they throw him under the bus.
It's like when youth sports, when the coach is also the parent of the starting pitcher or the starting quarterback or the starting point guard.
Unbelievable. There are no winners in that story. I mean, if he assaulted his wife, then that's reasons for him never to get the job. But they knew that. The incident was 31 years old. Right. They've known it for 31 years. They were perfectly fine with him getting the job. Right. But just when he didn't play their kid, they became Me Too warriors.
For the past 31 years, they were like, it is what it is. And now, all of a sudden, yes. Wow, I did not know those details of this.
Yeah. Huh. So, we had our family call this morning. My mother has been boring the living daylights out of us about the local park has like an allotment where citizens can go and do some gardening. I don't understand the details.
Like a community garden type deal.
It's like a community garden.
Okay. The
thing has a fence. The fence has a gate. The gate has a key.
And your brother-in-law got stuck on the wrong side of the fence again. Is that what
happened? Different fence. But she was telling us that because of cuts, local funding cuts, it's been shut down and the key has been taken from them, and so they can't get into it anymore. So it's kind of going wild. I think again.
Okay.
Very boring.
You stop paying attention as soon as she says key or fence.
You better believe it. But today, it was announced that she has discovered that she all along was in possession of a spare key to this gate. But get this, my favourite part about this was, she said, and you know whose fault it is? It's your father's fault, who's been dead for 11 years. I mean, just to be clear. She said, yeah, it's on his keyring. I found a keyring of his, and I found the key. Later in the conversation, she admits that the garden and the fence and the gate were only installed 7 years ago.
so he wasn't even alive when the garden was installed.
Of all the people in the world who can claim innocence for putting that key on the keyring, I think my father is number one on that list.
Oh, wow.
But she's still blaming him.
Yeah, I can relate. Stacey has a way of finding a way to put blame on me in pretty much any situation. She was just saying something this past week, and she said, and if it doesn't work out, I'll find a way to blame your dad. She was talking to Molly.
Well, we all know why the Steelers lost.
That's right. Oh.
All right. Well, let's get down to business, shall we?
Let's do.
How did we leave our favourite Arya Stark? Well, the last few times, honestly, that we've seen Arya,
has she been doing anything else in this book?
She's been roaming around the Riverlands in search of Lord Beric, Dondarion, and Thoros of Myr. Along the way, she and her band of brothers of the Brotherhood Without Banners heard many rumours of Lord Beric's death, which the brothers quickly discounted as fake news. They also heard news of northmen harassing people in pursuit of the Kingslayer. Eventually, they ended up at Acorn Hall, where Lady Smallwood pointed them in a possible direction to find Beric and Thoros, and gave Arya a bath, or indeed two, and some new clothes. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
Okay. Well, guess what? Arya, Gendry, and their escorts.
They found Lord Beric?
They found the town of Stoney Sept.
Well, that was probably there all along.
It probably was, yes. Arya sees signs of war, both outside and inside the town gates, and Harwin tells Arya of a battle her father won in this town during another war many years before, where Robert Baratheon was nearly captured or killed while recuperating in the town. But Ned and Hoster Tully stormed the town and sent the Targaryen army fleeing. The fight came to be known as the Battle of the Bells.
The gate captain opens the gate when he realizes who is approaching. He tells them that their food supply has been improving of late. The Huntsman has rounded up a stray flock of sheep, and they have crops that survived the war on the south side of the Blackwater. Of course, they've got their fair share of those who'd like to take what they've got, and on top of that, there's plenty of bands roaming the area looking for the Kingslayer.
Seems the town huntsman is currently out himself looking for Jaime, and the captain imagines the man's dogs will have themselves the taste of lion blood before long. Lem suggests in no uncertain terms that that'd be a really bad idea if the huntsman lets his dogs eat Jaime. But it turns out there's history there, as when the Western Army came through the area, they raped the man's wife and sister and caused a lot of damage to the man's livestock and crops.
As the group make their way through the streets, the town begins to come alive as residents emerge from hiding. When they reach the town square, they find a dozen iron cages hanging from posts. Inside the cages are men in various stages of death or dying. A chill goes through Arya when she discovers that they're northmen. Several are dead, some appear unconscious, but a few cry out for water.
A townsman tells Arya that it's punishment for their crimes. They rode into a village called Tumbler's Falls, looking for the Kingslayer. When they didn't find him, they took to rape and murder. The man who committed the rape had his genitals removed. Lem questions why they weren't hung, as is appropriate. Lord Beric isn't down with torture.
Arya's had enough. She fills a cup with water from a nearby fountain, stands on Gendry's shoulders and pours water over the men's heads. When the task is done, Anguy puts arrows through the men, putting them out of their misery. The townsfolk are none too happy. They threaten to tell the huntsman when he returns.
Eventually, the group stops at an inn called the Peach. The innkeeper and her serving girls seem very familiar with the men in Arya's group and offer them food and shelter, among other things. However, first they must all bathe, including Arya, whose protests go unheard.
When Arya is properly scrubbed and dressed in frilly, lacy clothes, she sits in the common room to eat. Using the skills Syrio Farrell taught her, which I think should be paraphrased, paying attention to the bleedingly obvious. She comes to the conclusion that this is not an ordinary inn. It is, in fact, a brothel. An observation she shares with Gendry, who says she shouldn't be here then, as it's not a suitable establishment for a high-born lady like herself.
A girl, overhearing the tail end of their conversation, sits down beside Gendry and informs him that she too is highborn. As the daughter of a king, in fact. Seems Robert, as infirm and injured as he was, still found time for the ladies during his stay in the town. Arya notices the girl does have hair like the old king, but that means nothing. Gendry has the same type of black mop on his head.
Oh, Arya. The girl, named Bella after the battle, makes advances on Gendry, which send him scuttling away. The confused girl leaves Arya in order to find the company of another man. While taking in the scene, Arya overhears the innkeep Tansy telling how Lady Catelyn Stark and the woman who killed Renly spent the night in Jaime Lannister's cell together. Catelyn then released Jaime the next morning out of love. Arya calls false on that tale.
Unfortunately, Arya's solitude is short-lived. An old man plops down next to her and asks her name. Before she can answer, Gendry puts his hand on the man's shoulder and informs him that Arya is his sister. The ruse is successful and the man leaves in pursuit of a different girl.
Arya questions why Gendry called her his sister, which he assumes is an insinuation that he's too low-born to be her sister. He angrily tells her to beat it, and a confused Arya does as she's told, retiring to the group's sleeping accommodations.
Arya is awoken the next morning by the sound of many dogs barking. She goes to the window and sees men removing one of the dead men from the crow cage and preparing to add a new occupant. They call the man a Lannister and threaten to send him to his brother once the crows are done with him. The man sits unmoving, despite being pelted with dung from some townsmen. Gendry asks if it's the Kingslayer, but when a stone hits the man in the face, he turns his head, allowing Arya to see his face. It's not the Kingslayer, but it is an answer to her prayers. Oh. Beric Dondarion.
Those are our prayers, Mackelly. It's slightly embarrassing how long it took me to figure out who that guy is. I was like, I feel like I should know this. But...
Well, it's not clear. We don't know for sure, so,
No, we don't. And it would be a spoiler, so we can't actually say who it is. But
right.
They do say he's a bit big for the cage, which is a pretty good clue.
Yes. But this town of Stoney Sept does seem to be faring better than a lot of the other Riverlands towns we've seen or heard from. At least they have food.
Yep. It is a bigger town, so it's harder to sort of like destroy, like it's been happening to some villages. And it is right on the sort of southern edge of the Riverlands. And so its southern border is the Reach. And so any spillover into the Reach would be problematic for the Tyrell Lannister alliance, and so one of the things they said is that they've still got crops south of the Blackwater, which is that must be bordering on the Reach's lands at that point. So I don't know if they're pilfering.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's because of its location at the southern part of the Riverlands. And yeah, you have to imagine the Lannisters just didn't feel like crossing the Blackwater to go destroy crops over there,
right,
on their way.
And also, I mean, why harass the big towns which will be fortified and defended when you can cause the same amount of grief in the Riverlands by destroying the undefended villages,
Right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's that. Of course, Arya does still see signs of destruction as she's entering the town.
Yeah.
So the Western force certainly did some damage, just maybe not as much as others.
And the problem, of course, is that every town in the Riverlands has now been sort of like raked over by so many different forces. I mean, the Lannisters came through. The Mummers came through. Roose Bolton's crew is going through. The Northmen, the Karstarks are now coming through. It's like,
they're the whipping boys of the Seven Kingdoms.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
they really are.
It really is the problem with being the center of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah.
The fighting, if there's fighting in various factions, there's a high likelihood they're going to end up in your backyard.
Yeah. So the story of the Battle of the Bells involves a couple of details which you've flagged as important, but you have to expand on why they're important. So one of the people killed was Dennis Arryn, who they gave him a nickname. They said he was the
Darling of the Vale.
The Darling of the Vale,
yes.
Very much. And Hoster Tully was at the battle too, and was wounded in the battle, but not fatally or too grievously. Why are these important?
Okay, so stick with me here. So Dennis Arryn was...
Where am I going, Mackelly?
That's true. You're a captive audience. Everyone else stick with me here. So Dennis Arryn was Jon Arryn's heir. Oh gosh, there's a lot of heir going on here. Dennis Arryn was Jon Arryn's heir.
Got it.
At this point. Because
if you should have said he was his heir in the Vale, then
Dennis Arryn had become his heir because Elbert Arryn, the previous heir to Jon, died alongside Brandon Stark in King's Landing when Brandon rode to demand to fight.
Were they Jon Arryn's nephews?
Roundabouts, yes.
Okay, roundabout. They weren't his sons.
No, they're not his sons.
Right.
So it left Dennis Arryn as Jon Arryn's last realistic heir after Elbert died.
Gotcha.
So Dennis dying here created a succession crisis for the Vale. Now here's where Hoster's presence plays a role. Seeing that Jon had lost his heir, Hoster used Jon's need for the Riverlands' aid in the war as a bargaining chip in negotiations for the betrothal with Lysa. And as Kat deduced, Lysa's previous pregnancy also proved that she was fertile. Another important detail in Jon choosing his next wife. So it created the position for Hoster Tully to successfully marry Lysa to Jon Arryn, and for Jon to feel the pressure and the need to marry someone like Lysa, who's so significantly younger than him, but also known to be fertile. Yeah. And so he was there to witness it. And
are we confident of the timelines? Are we confident that her pregnancy was known to Hoster at this point? Because that's the key part of this, is that Hoster was keen to marry her off because she was used goods,
Right.
And are we confident that had happened by this point?
Well, it didn't need to happen beforehand. Hoster just had to know that Jon Arryn had lost his heir.
Right, yeah.
And now,
yeah.
Hey, do you want my help? You want the Riverlands' help in this war? Well, guess what? I got a daughter, and you need a wife and an heir.
But of course, I mean, Hoster's already fighting at this point. It's not like he was withholding.
Right. But he may have threatened to do so if he didn't marry Lysa. It certainly put a lot of pressure on Jon and Lysa to have a son and heir. And then when they did, it put all their eggs in one little shall I say robin eggs?
Robin's nest.
Little robin's nest, yes. All the eggs in a robin's nest.
That's a good point. So of course, if Hoster was, if the pregnancy had already happened and Hoster was very keen to get her married off, it does actually sort of like cast a sort of like little suspicion on her. How did Dennis Arryn die exactly? Oops!
You say it was John Connington, but anybody actually
it does say it was John Connington. But yeah.
That is a solid point I hadn't thought about.
Obviously, people are looking for the Kingslayer all over the Riverlands because they're not sure which way he would go. Certainly, the route that Arya has been on since she got captured by the Brotherhood Without Banners is one fairly direct route. You take there's no road on the maps, but presumably there is a road south to Stoney Sept, and then you can sail down the Blackwater Rush all the way to King's Landing.
Right.
That's a fairly direct route. We know that, in fact, they went the other way. They went down the Red Fork, and now they're going... I mean, well, the simple way is Red Fork to King's Road.
Yes, but they only made it to the Inn of the Kneeling Man, and then they basically started down the path that Arya and the Brotherhood have been taking because they went straight south. Somehow they ended up way east in Maidenpool. That was a gap we didn't get filled in, or at least haven't yet.
And the logic of that gap, of course, is that they went back to the river. I mean, because the river's the way to get to Maidenpool quicker.
Yes, of course, you also get a lot closer to Harrenhal going that way than going straight south. But, maybe this is why we had questioned at the time, why in the world would they have made it all the way east to Maidenpool before heading south? Maybe this is why they went an unconventional path to avoid the obvious pursuer. The pursuers who were thinking of following the obvious route of just going south.
So Lem asks if the men being held in the crow cages was done by the orders of Sir Wilbert. Now, we don't know who Sir Wilbert is, really, do we? We assume he's Lord of Stoney Sept, but...
Yeah, well, because he's Sir Wilbert and not Lord Wilbert, he would have likely been a landed knight. So maybe the town fell into his domain. It's a pretty big town to be held by a knight.
It's strange. I went through the appendices looking for who was the Lord of the Stoney Sept, and I didn't see it.
Yeah, and this is the only reference in any of the books that I could find of Sir Wilbert. So
yeah,
he seems.
But anyway, at some point he was an authority over this town.
Yes,
but
right.
The townspeople say he's been dead for a year because he died in the fighting.
Right. So we don't know who he was, but he seems to be dead, and there seems to have become a leadership vacuum.
Right,
in the town.
Because the guy, the angry guy with the dogs appears to be in charge.
Yes, he does.
Known as the Huntsman, he seems to be the one who's running things, and not very friendlyly, it seems.
No. We'll get more to the Huntsman in a minute, but yeah, he doesn't seem to be a benevolent overlord here.
Yes, and this is going to cause a bit of a problem with the Brotherhood Without Banners because Beric doesn't agree with the torturing of enemies, and it's pretty clear that putting them in cages until they're dead is torturing them. So
sure seems like it. Yeah, like you said, Beric, Lem tells the townspeople Beric is not. He doesn't believe in torturing the enemy, and it just made me think that much like with Robb's Northmen, as we're seeing in various places in the Riverland, they're basically thought of as just as bad as the Lions. So it seems like the agenda from the top brass is not always making its way down to the boots on the ground here. Yeah.
And I mean, is that a failure of leadership, or is that just an inevitability when you have a large army like this? With stretched communication lines.
Yeah, and you see it even within the Brotherhood Without Banners, because their organization is a very loosely structured bunch that's held under the umbrella of the Brotherhood, and they're clearly they're not in frequent contact with the leaders, as we've spent all book just trying to find one.
Right.
So you got people making assumptions on how to handle things, and that's what you have happening here.
When they ever find him, they're going to have to tell him to send out a message. Hey, policy on torture. Zero tolerance, therefore. And in about 4 years' time, people should have got the message.
Right, yeah. And, a perfect example is what we've been seeing with Arya, because the guys don't know what to do with her, so we've been on a wild goose chase to find Beric to get instructions. So, that there are downsides to this type of organizational structure.
Yeah. So the wolves in the cages are almost certainly Karstark men, because they were hunting Jaime Lannister, and of course that's the Karstarks. The Karstarks have basically given up the war in favour of hunting down Jaime Lannister, because presumably the promise of the Karstark daughter's hand in marriage still holds, even though Rickard has been deheaded.
Yeah, of course the people out looking for Jaime might not actually know that detail, that Rickard is no longer with us. But
that's very true.
Yeah, it's almost certainly the Karstarks, these wolves here, and it's the huntsman that has made the call to put these men in crow cages, and what the Western army did to his
family,
wife, his sister, and everything, you could certainly understand why he would want to take such vengeance on
the Western army.
Well, but but they're not the Western army, they're
right.
They're Northerners, right. So he's just lashing out, I guess. Anybody who's causing problems, and what they did was, what these men did was terrible enough.
Correct.
I think
they possibly deserved the rope that the Brotherhood would have given them.
Yes, absolutely, and I think probably prior to what the Western Army did to him, he was just called the Huntsman, and now after this incredibly traumatic event, he's become the Mad Huntsman, as they frequently call him. But it's a bit of a mixed bag, his leadership here, because on one hand, he is providing food for the townspeople. The gate captain mentioned that he's the one that brought in the flock of sheep that has helped with their food needs. But then on the other hand, as we've been saying, due to this terrible trauma suffered at the hands of the Lannisters, which I think we only kind of just to cover the surface of it, is they raped his wife and his sister. They killed his flock of sheep, a bunch of his dogs, and then took the bodies of the dogs and dumped them into his well. So
very unpleasant. So kind of thing that could drive anyone mad. Yes.
So
yes.
He's taken to committing vigilante justice on anyone he deems worthy. It seems like the townspeople have accepted this ideology and methodology. No one seems to be coming to the forefront saying this is not right. So
no. In fact, when Arya does give the water to the men in the cages, the townsfolk sort of criticize her for it and tell her not to get involved.
Yes.
And interestingly, of course, she's doing it because she sees them as part of her pack, and just human compassion, which that's good to hear from Arya, because we are a little bit concerned about her psyche. But of course, she's unaware of the fact that part of the pack is pretty sundered from her part of the pack. Yes. She just doesn't know it.
She doesn't,
because they are Karstarks who no longer care for the Northern Alliance.
Yeah, last chapter when she was at Acorn Hall and she heard about the Karstarks having been there recently, she thought about, I wonder if I could escape to the safety of Robb's men, which, as we mentioned at the time, would have been a terrible idea.
But it is good to see her still having empathy with the dying men. So
absolutely,
she isn't completely lost to us.
Possibly spurred by considering them as part of her pack.
Yeah, I think if they'd been Lannister rapists, she might not have bothered. But anyway, it's still good, I think.
Yeah, it is, because we worried about the toll that has been taken on Arya basically since the sacking of the Tower of the Hand. She's had to kill people, and she's seen just atrocities left and right. So it's good to see she still has empathy within her.
Yeah. So while she's in the inn, she, as the book says, she used her Syrio training to see beneath the surface of what's going on and figure out that this is a brothel. So I don't know how she managed it.
I was impressed that she recognized that some of the people in the Peach were laughing, as she put it, too hard. They were There was a lot of merriment, but some people were laughing too hard somehow. And, it certainly sounds like possibly some here at the Peach are doing a bit of acting, pretending that maybe others are funnier and more clever and charming than they genuinely might be.
I think you're slandering the profession there, but yes, I take your point. And of course, I mean, the most obvious part was the fact that there were so many young girls working there. Young and pretty girls. That was and one of them was throwing themselves at Gendry, which is a real clue. Why the heck would anyone do that? Is what Arya's thinking.
So we meet this young girl named Bella, and she mentions that she is the daughter of Robert Baratheon, that while he was injured and in hiding and being nursed back to health, he managed to father her. And, at first it might seem like it puts a new slant on Robert's time in the Stoney Sept, like possibly he was less hurt than the legend suggests, maybe taking time to enjoy the company of various women while Ned and Jon Arryn and Hoster Tully, etc. were handling the fighting. However, as we'll see in background, there is an explanation to his access to the women of the Peach.
Is the background that Robert was a randy old dog?
That would be a really short background.
and yet so much evidence to back it up.
Yes.
Of course, to those of us in the know, it is quite ironic that Arya discounts Bella's claim to being Robert's daughter because she looks like Gendry. Lots of people look like that because, of course, we know that they are half siblings.
Right.
Gendry blows off. I liked this. I don't know if you noticed this. You wrote this sentence in the notes, and it said Gendry blows off Bella's advances and leaves. So it's like, if you're not going to come to bed with me, will you go and clear the leaves from my garden, please? So yes, he blows off her advances and then he leaves.
Don't happen. Blow off the leaves. Leaf blowers in the garage. Gas cans next to it.
And can we all just breathe one sigh of relief that one extra layer of incest hasn't happened by mistake here?
That's why the "few" is in the notes. Yes. In parentheses.
But some of it, I mean, okay, there's the good news. Now the bad news. It does seem that some of it is that he's feeling some kind of feelings for Arya that are not purely platonic, it seems.
It's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, last we saw them, they were rolling around the Acorn Hall smithy. It looked to be all, just having fun and just kids being kids. And of course, their age gap, he's like 16-ish and she's 10, would make it completely unacceptable. But of course, it's a whole lot closer in age than Sansa and Tyrion. And they just got hitched. So I think it's more likely that he thinks of Arya like a sister, and maybe it'd be very awkward to be approached in such a manner sitting next to your 10-year-old sister.
To kind of any 10-year-old girl.
Yes, any 10. Right, yes. Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, I definitely think there's a sort of a brother-sisterly thing going, but there is that kind of overlay of, I mean, they are both very young. I mean, you think Gendry is probably extremely inexperienced. He's a big, strong lad, being the son of Robert Baratheon, but he has probably never talked to girls his own age.
Oh, yeah. You get a sense of that he generally gets embarrassed easily when it comes to girls. The way he blushes just at Tansy, the innkeep, just pointing out how nice his arms are and how Alice is going to love those arms, and Arya thinks she's never seen Gendry turn so red.
Right, yeah. So later Gendry returns to run off a creepy old man who's chatting up Arya. Thankfully he gets there quickly enough that Arya probably doesn't even notice the nature of the conversation that was taking place. It hadn't moved on from the sort of introduction, but it was clearly heading in a creepy direction, so
yeah.
Thank you, Gendry.
Yes, good timing there. And, when the creepy old man asks Arya her name, she forgets for a second what she's going by these days.
Oh, yeah.
And I honestly had lost track too. And it was so the last we had heard, it was Squirrel, which came after Squab, which is, the two names she's gotten so far since she's met the Brotherhood Without Banners. I don't know that she was going to go with either of those two. I don't know what she would have gone with had Gendry not gotten there in time to interrupt her.
Your worst nightmare would be that choice.
That would be a good one.
And then that leads to an odd fight between Gendry and Arya because Gendry says, "I'm her brother," which, is a good way to get rid of a creepy old man, especially if you're built like Gendry.
Right.
But Arya just doesn't understand why he said that, because she doesn't understand the situation, I think.
Right.
But her not understanding it makes Gendry think that she's disowning him, like she wouldn't want him as a brother. And then that sort of like sets them off on a "you're too highborn for me" kind of thing. And,
yes.
Squabble.
It's a good point you brought up there that Arya just didn't understand why he would have said that to this man, because she didn't understand what this man was sitting next to her to, with the goal of. And
perhaps if she'd used her Syrio Forel training, she might have figured it out.
Yes. But clearly he is sensitive about being lowborn after learning who Arya is, which again is more irony involving Gendry and his parentage, because he's about as highborn as one could get.
Well,
technically.
Amongst bastards.
Yes, right, yes. His father was as highborn as you could possibly get in the realm. We'll say. But the brother cover story might have the right of it, like we were talking just a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
It feels like I think he feels a little sister quality to her and is offended maybe that she questioned it rather than reciprocating or being grateful for it.
Yeah. Definitely something. So
one thing Arya, while she is sitting there at the in the common room at the beach, she wishes she had a map, because everyone's preoccupied. She thinks this could be a really good time for me to sneak out, but one, I'm not getting past the gate, and two, I don't even know where I am. So she wishes she had a map to see which direction Riverrun is in. But she'd likely be rather upset to see how far in the wrong direction they've gone.
Yeah. They have gone an extraordinary distance. I was looking on the map myself. The map comes in very handy, Arya. You're correct. Because from the Inn of the Kneeling Man to Stoney Sept, it's almost as far as it is from Stoney Sept to King's Landing.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that different.
Right.
They have gone a huge distance. I mean, she's undone so much of her traipse north.
Yeah. Yeah, especially from the Inn of the Kneeling Man, where this journey south,
which is
started.
north of Riverrun. It's mostly east of Riverrun, but it is actually further north than Riverrun. So she got further north than Riverrun, and now she's back down practically in the Reach.
Right. Yeah, boy, she would probably be pretty upset if she had learned. Yeah. But I will say, at least the group is taking good care of the kids, as good as a group of roving men can. They do seem to care for the kids,
They do. Yes, they do. So Tansy, the innkeeper, tells Lem and Harwin about Jaime's escape. And this rumour has obviously gone through the countryside like wildfire.
Right,
but, I mean, everyone's got the basics of it. And in fact, Tansy has some very accurate details. It's similar to Ravella Smallwood's version, but Tansy also knows that Kat and Brienne were together with Jaime for quite a while before the release, which is...
That is a surprising detail.
Right.
For someone, in the Stoney Sept to have picked up.
And actually, it doesn't... Now you've said that, it doesn't really ring true. What should happen with this story is you should get the most accurate, most detailed information the soonest and the closest to the source.
Sure.
And then as you go further away, you should get more and more vagueness and made up stuff.
Right. Telephone game style.
Exactly. So now we're hundreds of miles south of Riverrun. It should be gibberish by now.
Right. Yeah, and we didn't get to hear his response, but Harwin was one of the men that Tansy was telling this story to, and he grew up in Winterfell, so he should know that the story doesn't fit with Kat's behavior.
Oh, right, because Tansy's actually suggesting that they had some kind of threesome sexual thing, and then out of love for Jaime, Catelyn released Jaime.
Right, and she did release Jaime out of love.
Out of love. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing. This story even had verbatim what Cat was thinking, which is extraordinary.
Right. Was Tansy in the dungeon at the time?
Tansy is actually Cat's psychologist. And why precisely did you do this?
But then Gendry comes back, and he's still mad at Arya, and he basically boots her out, and she goes up to their sleeping quarters, and as she's falling asleep, she says her nightly prayer, in quotations.
Yes, and actually this is important, of course, because the very last line of the chapter is that one of her prayers has been answered.
Yes.
Suggesting that whoever it is in this list you're about to go through.
So it just seemed like a good time to check in on the names, since some have been a while since we've caught up with them. There's the obvious ones that we don't really need to go through. Cersei, Joffrey, Sir Ilyn.
hang on. Let me imagine that it's Joffrey going to be put in the crow cage just for a second.
He does have a brother.
Yes. And he is a Lannister. Check. He's not that big, though, is he? That's a shame.
No, I guess not. But then we've also got Sir Ilyn and Sir Meryn and the Hound and the Mountain, the Clegane brothers. So, first of all, Sir Meryn Trant of all Kingsguard, why is he on the list? He's on the list because he was sent to retrieve her from the Tower of the Hand and stopped by Syrio Forel and likely killed Syrio Forel. That got him on the list.
Yeah. And do we know Sir Meryn's still in one piece, right?
He is, yes. It was Mandon Moore that was...
Mandon Moore
and Preston Greenfield. Both have died.
Which one took Tommen to...
That was Boris Blunt. That
it
took
was
him to
Blunt,
Rosby.
that's right.
Yes.
Yes.
Ares Oakheart took Marcella to Dorne.
That's right, yeah. So, the Clegane brothers are on the list. The Hound was rebuffed by Sansa when he was running away from the Battle of the Blackwater and apparently headed north. The Mountain was sent up the King's Road to cut off the retreat of the northern forces that were heading toward Duskendale, who were then met by Randall Tarley's men. So they're both in the Riverlands, or both heading in this, they're both generally in the Riverlands. So
right.
Possible. And they both have a brother.
Right. Each other.
Yes.
Each other is their brother. So then we get Dunsen.
Oh, and one last thing. They're both big.
Big, yes. I don't know that they're getting... It would be very interesting to watch them try and fit the Mountain in that crow cage.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that. But anyway, so Dunsen, he's part of the group who captured Gendry, Hot Pie, and Arya, part of the Mountains Men. He's added to her list because he took Gendry's bull helmet, and she considered giving his name to Jaqen H'ghar, but he left Harrenhal before she could do so.
Raff the Sweetling, whose full name was Rafford, he was also part of the Mountains Men. We heard terrible deeds that he'd done, but he's likely in her nightly prayers specifically for killing Lommie Greenhands when he learned that Lommie couldn't walk.
Yeah, that's definitely going to get him on the list.
Yeah.
Then we get Polliver, also one of the Mountains Men. He made the list primarily for taking Needle when Arya was captured. And but the last we saw of him riding out of Harrenhal, he was wearing Gendry's bull helmet. So Dunsen had taken it, and Polliver was last seen with it. So maybe a gambling debt or something.
Yeah. And then the Tickler was the torturer of this group, who was added to the because of the cruel and terrible things that he was doing on the small folk, ostensibly to find out about Beric Dondarrion's movements during their march to Harrenhal.
And she wonders if maybe some of them might be dead already, and unfortunately none that we know of are dead yet.
Right. But of course, we would only know of it if a POV character bumped into them or heard rumour of it.
Yeah.
We know what rumours can be like.
Right.
Catelyn and Brienne's tryst with Jaime being an example.
Polliver could have been in that River Run dungeon as well.
Right, exactly.
So then she falls asleep pretty quickly. Actually, I think it said she fell asleep very quickly after reciting her nightly list. And she dreams of being a wolf and running with a pack. And that's becoming pretty common for Stark kids these days. But it's unclear if it's a warg dream or just a run-of-the-mill dream about wolves.
Yeah.
It could be due to the interaction with the Northmen earlier, which she thought of as her pack.
Yeah.
Or it could be as simple an explanation as she heard the huntsman's dogs barking far off, but not loud enough to wake her, just to affect her dreams. Because when she wakes, she hears a lot about dogs barking. She thinks there might be 50 or so.
Right. So she's woken and the dogs are barking because they've captured someone and they're bringing in this... they're replacing the fat man from the cages with this... who was killed by Anguy after Arya gave him the water. This person, whoever it is, gets called a Lannister, but Arya knows it's not Jaime. So what we do know is he's large, so because they say the cage is going to be a little snug for the likes of you, and he has a brother. And apparently he works for the Lannisters, so we can conclude, and Arya recognizes him.
Yes, right.
So I think it has to be that... Has she ever seen the mountain? Like up close and personal? Yeah, she did. She was in it. Yeah, she knows what the mountain looks like too. So it could be the Hound or the mountain.
I don't know. When would she have seen the mountain? Because he didn't come to King's Landing.
When she was the captive, when she was being taken to Harrenhal.
Oh yes, of course. Yes, of course. She would definitely have seen the mountain. So she would know.
So it could be either. The obvious one is the Hound though, because to capture the mountain, you'd have to defeat his sizable force. The Hound was wandering lonely as a cloud.
And they said his arms were bound with hempen rope. I wonder how much hempen rope it would take to bound the mountain's hands. I wouldn't want to be the one putting that rope on, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
So
put the bell on this cat, would you? Yeah.
So which prayer was answered? Is it the one that'll get her to River Run? Or
well, that's interesting.
Or possibly the nightly prayer, which is the one we are assuming that it is.
I mean, okay, well, give me a theory then for how it could be the prayer of getting to River Run. A big Lannister presence in a cage is going to get to River Run.
I don't have a good answer for that.
I don't have anything either. So why don't you give me some background instead?
Oh, right, I'll do that. So as Harwin tells us at the beginning of the chapter, there was a battle here at Stoney Sept called the Battle of the Bells. And the Targaryen forces in the Stoney Sept were led by Lord Jon Connington, King Aerys' Hand of the King. Jon was fairly new to the role and looking to earn glory in the eyes of his king. As we've discussed before, Jon's predecessor as Hand of the King, Owen Merryweather, had been stripped of his title and exiled for being ineffectual in the eyes of King Aerys, and Jon was hoping to avoid such a fate. As for Robert, he had just come off a loss in the Battle of Ashford at the hands of Lord Randall Tarley, and as Harwin tells us, Robert was fleeing north to rejoin Ned and Hoster Tully. Harwin also mentions how Jon Connington had his men searching high and low in the Stoney Sept for Robert, which included the sewers, which is a detail Harwin left out. Yet all turned up empty-handed. In an attempt to get townspeople to give Robert up, Jon offered rewards and pardons, but he also used these crow cages as means of persuasion. All of it amounted to nothing in terms of fleshing out the future king. Well, turns out that Robert was moved from location to location to keep him safe and hidden, and the last place that Robert hid was in the Peach, which was likely an ideal moment to conceive Bella, if her story is to be believed.
And I do.
Okay. Well, Harwin tells us of how the battle went, and ultimately Jon Connington was sent running, and despite his best efforts to avoid the fate of his predecessor Merryweather, Jon found himself in the exact same boat. King Aerys, not known for his understanding nature, had the Connington land stripped from Jon, along, of course, with the title of Hand of the King. He probably did that first. He was then exiled to Essos, just like poor Owen Merryweather before him. Although both were given preferable punishment to Jon's successor, Carlton Chelstead, who was burned alive with wildfire. So, there's silver lining, I guess.
Yeah.
Although it's believed that while in exile, Jon Connington, former Lord of Griffin's Roost and Hand of the King, drank himself to death.
But drank yourself to death versus burned to death with wildfire. I'll take the fun times myself.
If given the choice of just those two, I agree. Yes.
In comparison with the TV show, a lot of this story, and let's be honest, thankfully, gets dropped from the TV show because she's just meandering through the Riverlands looking for Beric Dondarion.
That's boring TV right there.
Yeah. The Lannister prisoner is actually captured at the same time as Arya, and they travel to see Beric Dondarion together as prisoners right from the moment she's captured.
Okay.
So, again, that's another way I know who this is, not just my powers of deduction, but my powers of watching TV.
You weren't trained by Serial Pharrell. That's why.
So, pedantry corner. So, just a map question, and it's not really pedantry. He couldn't possibly have drawn every road on the maps. There must be a road linking Riverrun to Stoney Sept. It's a big town.
Right.
It's at the other end of the Riverlands, and there's no rivers connecting.
Right.
So it would be, and it's quite mountainous between them, so there must be a decent road. There has to be.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
But the one pedantry I will mention is if the town is walled and has a brand new gate, which is being kept closed, and there's a captain of the gate to keep people out, why were the citizens of the town hiding when the Brotherhood were allowed in?
Good question. There's only like a handful of the...
Right. Shouldn't you be
like
on the
army
walls
was
defending
at
the gates if you're worried? Not hiding in your houses?
I follow your line of thinking there.
There you go. That's what pedantry's all about. A pointless observation of something slightly weird.
Well done. I had nothing, so I'm glad you found some things to bring up.
I will say, it was only as you read out the summary that I ran down here to write it in. Yeah. Give me some news and notes.
Well, we've got some news. There's new info about Miguel Sapochnik's departure from House of the Dragon. We mentioned on our show back in September that Sapochnik left his role as co-showrunner alongside Ryan Condal, while still maintaining an executive producer title. HBO also announced at the time that Sapochnik has a first-look deal with them to develop future projects, so all seemed cordial and friendly between all parties.
So not forced to drink wildfire then. Okay, good.
Right, exactly. However, it's being reported by Michael Bellani of the news outlet Puck that the separation was the result of HBO refusing to allow Sapochnik's wife, actress Alexis Rabin, to continue on as producer of the show, citing her lack of experience. Aside from her role in the producer's room, Rabin also played the on-screen character Talia, who was a spy for the spy master, or spy mistress, I guess, Missaria.
So possibly stripped of lands and titles and exiled to Essos.
Yes, that could have been what happened, yes.
So we've added a new perk to the Knight of the Realm Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier. We want to get to know our Knights of the Realm better, so you'll be invited to 2 video chats of the year. Come and have a chat with us. We're very friendly.
Yes, we're very much looking forward to meeting and chatting with you all.
Yeah. And we got a review?
We did get a review, yes. It's from... Do you want to read it?
No, you can have it.
Okay.
I often take the reviews, and I feel greedy taking the reviews. You do the work, I read the celebration emails.
Not true. We both do the work. So this is from Podcastapalooza, which is
a good name.
Good name, yeah. From Apple Podcasts. And the subject is Best A Song of Ice and Fire podcast ever, which is good enough for me. I'm not sure we need to go on. I can only blunder my way through this and make it worse.
just randomly replace any prepositions with other prepositions.
Yeah, you should have heard me trying to go through that news earlier. That was not going to make it to an outtake. That was too long and painful.
Wasn't funny.
No. So anyway, here goes this review from Podcastapalooza. I went looking for more about the A Song of Ice and Fire world after starting House of the Dragon. I tried a few podcasts with tons of ratings, but couldn't get into them. I tried this one as a last chance before giving up, and I'm so glad I did. The guys are fun, easy to listen to, and put together such a great show. I love their format with the segments, and it's obvious that considerable time and energy goes into every episode. Plus, I like hearing their stories and listening to them chat about things in their lives. I'm tearing through episodes right now, but I'm here to stay even when I'm caught up. Thank you for what you do, Mackelly and Simon.
Well, thank you, Podcastapalooza. That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Put a smile on my face, and yes, thank you so very much.
All right, let's conclude. So not a lot's happening still for Arya, but one of her prayers has been answered. So this could, if it is the Mountain or the Hound, this could be the beginning of something different for her.
Yeah, this is her 5th POV, so she's had the most POVs, I believe, in this story, with the least amount of progress to the plot of her storyline.
Yeah, I mean, we had interesting background, like on her father and, various other, Winterfell, things like that. But yeah, she herself has been going backwards. I mean, literally.
Right. She's going to end up back at King's Landing before
exactly. I mean, if she falls in the river, she'll be swept up at King's Landing.
Yeah. So, we've given our takes, our thoughts on who this new prisoner is. And if it's someone on her prayer list, is the prayer answered by watching this person die?
I don't think anyone's on her prayer list for
right.
want to have a chat with.
So I guess it could be someone that's not necessarily from this prayer list. Like we said, it could have been, another one of her prayers is to get back to her family. So could be someone to help her do that.
And still no luck in tracking down Beric Dondarion. I do appreciate the TV show just simply put them together and said, now let's take them to Beric. The whole thing took less than an episode.
So you're saying this could have been done in one chapter?
That's all I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, at this point, it might have just been worth taking Arya to Riverrun themselves and just collecting some reward and being on their way.
Right. I mean, think about it. I mean, like, you're investing multiple man time. There's multiple men guarding her, and they're traipsing hundreds of miles south to traipse hundreds of miles north again to get a slightly better reward than they would have done if they'd just done it themselves.
Right.
It's not worth it.
Yes. It's certainly not productive to the cause by roaming around just looking for some leader to say, what should we do with her? We were about a few miles away from Riverrun.
Right.
Now we're halfway across the realm. Now what do you want us to do with her?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and the chances of her getting killed or something or lost to them grow all the time as well because the Riverlands are pretty lawless.
Right. Yes. It's very dangerous what they're doing.
Where are we headed next week, Mackelly?
Next week we're going north of the Wall to catch up with Jon, and I'll just say this: the Wall defends itself.
Okay.
All right.
That
is a saying, and it holds very true next week, and you'll find out why if you join us.
I wonder if Geo Mormont knew that.
That's why he took the whole Night's Watch north of it. It can handle itself in a fight.
There's 3 ways that you could help us. You could leave us a positive review. No better way to spread the word. You can buy some merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com, or you could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. Become a sustainer at the Lord Paramount or Knight of the Realm level, and you get to have a video chat with these handsome dudes.
That's right. You might prefer it just to be audio chat, but And of course, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com. You can go out and follow us on Twitter at @ghostharrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.